let me ask you a question. How much time, energy, and money does your organization spend on training every year? Now, here's a harder question. How much of that actually changes performance? Not how much people liked it, not how much they learned, but how much actually changed what people do and what the organization gets as a result. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most organizations, they're measuring learning, but they're not measuring performance. And that gap is costing more than we think. See, many L&D folks and teams, they focus on outputs. How many sessions were delivered? How many people completed a course? Not outcomes. Outputs create this illusion of effectiveness, but illusion isn't value. Let's put a number on this gap. So human capital isn't actually a soft line item. For most organizations, people costs are the single largest controllable expense on the P&L. Bigger than technology, bigger than real estate, often bigger than marketing combined. So when the investment in that line item doesn't produce a return, that's not a footnote. That's real money leaving the business. Let's start with turnover. Losing an employee doesn't just cost you headcount. It's recruiting, interviewing, onboarding, ramp up time, lost productivity, and the knowledge that walks out the door with the person that leaves. Depending on the role, replacing an employee costs somewhere between 30% and over 200% of their annual salary. Now let's layer in undertraining. Employees who feel undertrained after onboarding are dramatically more likely to leave. Half of newly onboarded employees already say they're likely to leave their employer soon. When they feel undertrained, that number jumps to 80%. That's not a training problem. That's a P&L problem wearing a training costume. And it's not just a problem with onboarding. Organizations spend enormous sums on leadership development alone. It's a $60 billion industry. But by some estimates, only about 10% of that spending actually produces results anyone can actually point to. Then there's the costs of mistakes. The rework, the escalations, the customer churn, the safety incidents, everything that happens when people were technically trained, but never actually changed what they do on the job. Every one of those carries a real number, even when nobody's calculating it. And here's the part that should really bother you. Most organizations aren't even watching this bleed. One industry study found that more than a third of L&D teams struggle to measure the impact of learning simply because of competing priorities, and nearly 1 in 5 don't even know where to start. The money is leaving. We're just not always watching it go. For decades, the Kirkpatrick 4 levels, or the Kirkpatrick Model, has been known as the gold standard for evaluating training. But somewhere along the way, many organizations reduced it to a checklist, a survey, a test, maybe a follow-up, and then they move on. Meanwhile, leaders are still asking, did it make a difference? And too often, we don't have a clear answer. But the Kirkpatrick model was never meant to measure training alone. It was designed to connect effort to outcomes, to link what we do to what actually changes, to the results organizations care about. See, it's simple enough for anyone to understand, but powerful enough to transform how organizations think about performance. And it's cyclical, not linear. Insights from every level feed back into how we design, partner, and adjust. So evaluation becomes an ongoing engine for improvement, not just a one-time report card. The story of the Kirkpatrick model begins in the 1950s. Dr. John Kirkpatrick was teaching a human relations program for industrial supervisors at the University of Wisconsin. As part of his PhD dissertation evaluating a human relations program for supervisors, he set out to answer a practical training question. Did this training actually work? He built on the work of organizational psychologist Dr. Raymond Katzel. And in 1959, when ASTD, now as we all know it, ATD, asked him to write an article on his evaluation work, he said what only Don knows how to say. I can do better. I can write 4. 1 on reaction, 1 on learning, behavior, and results. But Don didn't call them levels. He didn't even draw a triangle graphic that everyone now associates with his name. He wasn't aware that there even was a model until the 1970s. The industry gave it that shape. But the 4 questions were his. Did people like it? Did they learn something? Are they using it? And is it making a difference? And those became the 4 levels: reaction, learning, behavior, results. And the brilliance wasn't complexity, it was clarity. At its core, the model answers 4 questions. Did people find it valuable? That's level 1 reaction, not just satisfaction, but engagement and relevance to the work ahead. Did they learn what they needed? That's level 2 learning. The knowledge, skills, attitudes, confidence, and commitment to apply it. Are they doing what matters? That is level 3 behavior. Whether the environment enables or blocks the new behavior on the job. And did it make a difference? That's level 4 results, tracked through both leading indicators along the way and lagging indicators at the end. Decades later, the model evolved. Dr. Jim Kirkpatrick, Don's son, and Wendy Kaiser Kirkpatrick, Don's daughter-in-law, built the new World Kirkpatrick Model in 2010. They restored teachings that had been forgotten, corrected common misinterpretations, and centered relevancy at level 1 and confidence and commitment at level 2. And they emphasized something critical. Level 3 contains the magic of the model. It's where most of our effort needs to go, supported by what they called required drivers, the specific on-the-job structures and accountability tools needed for behavior change to hold. Because the real shift was this: start with the end in mind. Don't begin with training, begin with results. Then work backward to the behaviors, the learning, the experiences that make those results possible. And that shift changes everything. And today, the model continues to evolve. And its next iteration that I created is part of what we now understand. See, training doesn't operate in isolation. Performance is shaped by an environment, systems, leadership, culture, resources, expectations. We call this performance environment, or the performance environment. And it acts as both a foundation and an influencer. It can support progress at every level, or it can quietly block it, no matter how well designed the training is. So if we want behavior to change, we have to design and evaluate the whole system, not just the learning event. This is where the Kirkpatrick model becomes more than a framework. It becomes a way of thinking. That's why this model now extends far beyond training. Organizations use it for onboarding, leadership development, product launches, change initiatives, even employee engagement surveys, and AI adoption. Really, any initiative where performance matters. Because the logic is always the same. Define the result, identify the behaviors, build the capability, design the experience. So why does this model work still years and years later? Because it's both simple and strategic. It gives everyone, not just the learning teams, a common language to connect effort with outcomes. It moves organizations from train and hope to designing for performance. There's actually a second, deeper indicator hiding here. Return on expectations, or ROE, the ultimate measure of value delivered to the business, and return on performance, or ROP, the ultimate measure of how effectively the initiative itself was executed. We'll come back to both of those later in the series. But here's where most organizations still get stuck. A problem shows up, sales drops, errors increase, customers complain, and the default response is, we need training. And maybe training is part of the solution, but often it's not the real problem at all. So here's something to think about. Take a current initiative in your organization, not necessarily training, a system rollout, a process change, or customer initiative. What would success actually look like? What result would tell you it worked? And what do people need to do differently in order to get there? The Kirkpatrick model has stood the test of time because it's simple, flexible, and universal. But using it requires a shift from measuring activity to understanding performance, from delivering training to driving results. And that starts with one critical question. Are we solving the right problem? Because if we're not, nothing else we do will matter. And in the next episode, we're going to tackle that head on and uncover why training is often the wrong answer. If you want to learn more, make sure you pick up my book, Building a Culture of Evaluation, if you have not already, and check out more about the model and dive deeper into the series. Talk soon.